Welcome back to Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Last time we enacted Soren's most ingenious plan yet, and successfully lured Zelgius away from the main army. But not before he beat up Ranulf a bit. Yeah, Ranulf's been taking a big beating in story scenes so far. But things are going to look up for Ranulf because this chapter involves him pretty heavily.
The Laguz alliance, bolstered by the Hawk tribe and by Soren's tactical genius, thunders across the Benyon-held river. Emboldened by their success, they move east with amazing speed and capture the northern stronghold, Castle Celiora. The Laguz alliance has made a vital step in its march toward the Benyon capital, Xi'an. Benyon has now lost a valuable defensive line in the Riban River, and the Central Army has been forced to retreat east, taking refuge in Castle Gados. The morale of the Benyon soldiers is kept high by their faith in General Zelgius, while the Benyon nobles smolder with resentment at their defeat.
Like I said in the last part, I really like the way that you see the state of the war developing. Like, they explain how the enemy has lost a key defensive line. Also, Castle Gados. I've mentioned it a few times, but Gados is the domain of Lekane. He is the Duke of Gados. Says the one who has no grasp of military strategy whatsoever. But if one of the senators is forbidding him from retreating, he has to obey. It is interesting how you're almost kind of on Zelgius' side here. Even though he's your enemy, he feels like one of the good guys at this point. And once again, Lethael doesn't really say all that much. He does tend to get more dialogue in the extended script. Oh, if I remember right, this is a really great scene. So, after that major victory, Skrymir actually really likes Soren now. The feeling is definitely not mutual. It's kind of interesting to see Skrymir develop like this. Yeah, he's actually admitting it now. So Skrymir starts out as an idiot, but he does get some interesting developments. You're thinking not so differently from the senators here. And I find this also interesting. Something that a lot of Fire Emblem games usually don't go into is the whole idea of signing peace treaties. Not every war needs to be fought to the death, after all. Not everyone in Benyon is bad. There are people like Sanaki who definitely want peace, if we can get in touch with her somehow. And yeah, the Central Army is definitely a bad thing to fight. Ranulf alluded to this a little bit in the previous war. He mentioned how, when there's so much chaotic energy in the air, it's hard for Laguz to sit still. That's kind of an interesting line. Only took Soren about a minute to think about that, even less. But for now, straight to the base. So let's check out info. We have this conversation with Shinnen right here. I felt like there was another base conversation in this chapter, but maybe it's in the next chapter. Anyway, this one is kind of interesting. It's also a weird case of gameplay and story segregation. Are Aimee's attentions finally wandering from Ike? I doubt it. Maybe they are. Maybe they are. However, Ike obviously won't care. Well, that's interesting. I imagine him saying that in a very deadpan way. So we get a blue gem, i.e. 5,000 extra gold for this. So, this is kind of weird. Rolf is still a little behind. Seriously, Rolf has been getting strength screwed with one of the best strength throws in the game. For a bit. Like most Fog of War maps, this one's not that hard if you approach it cautiously. Of course, Shinnen would be showing up Rolf. Oh yeah, I never found that out in the last game. It's easy to forget that, but yeah, I never found that out. The only times that was revealed were when Rolf supports with Shinnen, and... Oh, I forgot about this line. I can't believe I forgot about it. This is another one of the best lines in the game. I think, like, this also showed up alongside the Sharp Objects line from from the last one as one of the best, like, in a voting for one of the best lines in the series. Yeah, Shinnen doesn't like anyone except sometimes Rolf, on good days. I think it's just because he pays well. And also because he wants to fight things and show his archery skills. Yeah, he can be tsundere sometimes, but he's in Sun mode almost constantly. Oh no. That's not going to end well. But anyway, we get a blue gem from that. And with that, we can go ahead and sell the blue gem back to the people that paid us the blue gem. And I might as well sell the white gem too. And use the money that we got from the thing they paid us to buy back the bow that Shinnen sold to them. I'm just confused now. This just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, you want to buy this. You really, really want to buy this. This is the silencer, and I probably need to put it on this chat. I don't think Rolf can use it. Oh, he can! Wow, he can use it. I thought it was S-ranked. But anyway, in the Japanese version, the silencer is called Shinnen's bow. Now, we will be getting a second one of these in 3 Endgame. So this is the only one we'll have access to for quite a while, but 50 uses, an insane amount of might, and an insane amount of hit rate. So it's an amazingly good bow. It's basically a max forged steel bow that you get without needing to pay, like, it's like pretty much a fraction of the money, like almost half the cost too. So this is an amazing bow. I recommend picking this up as soon as you have the opportunity. It's a really, really good weapon. So I will certainly take that, and I can't believe Rolf can actually use it. Thank you, Discipline. So, speaking of which, now that I'm in the items menu, I might as well swap some items around. Yes, in preparation, I should get like the second wind edge to Titania, I think she's fine for now. I will definitely not be using Titania very much in this chapter. This chapter really, really, really hates cavalry. You'll see the perfect example of why cavalry aren't that great in this game in this chapter. I guess you can combo Blossom, although I wonder who... I probably have to give Rolf Blossom, don't I? I mean, he's so behind in levels that he won't be suffering that much of an experience loss. Yeah, I kind of need to give Rolf Blossom, don't I? Nephany seems fine, I think. Yeah, her javelins are pretty good too. You will want a lot of ranged weapons in this chapter because there are going to be a lot of ledges to fight over. Alright, Har had the killer axe as well. How's he doing? Level 16, which is pretty good. Might as well... I'll probably sell the Ashera icon, actually. I think Gage is also fine on weapons for now. Mist could really use an extra healing staff. You know what? Where's Rice? Where is he? He's going to trade his men staff over to Mist. And... okay, I might be using that on Soren later. I might bonus experience first. Let me just check if anyone's support ranks can increase. No. They can't increase yet. Maybe I should support Rolf and Mia, but actually I'm kind of liking the Gatry and Mia support, to be honest. That worked out pretty well for me in the last chapter. Okay, let's do award experience first. So obviously we're going to cap off Ike with bonus experience here, because he gets much better stats on average with that, as I've no doubt beaten into your head by now. Yeah, that's cap defense. Yeah, so Ike is definitely getting much better games with bonus experience now. And... I mean, I don't really need any extra stats on Soren. Probably better off to do this. This at least means probably more strength on Nephany. Good, more strength. And I guess I can bonus experience Mia up a little. That's good. Your skill is now capped. That means I can probably give you another bonus experience level. Strength is also good. So, yeah, Mia should be, in fact, I think one more and you will have capped strength, but let's level up Gatry once first. Kind of a weird level up, but you have capped most of your good stats. Oh, that's not going to cost me much, I might as well. Yeah, it's probably 29. The strength cap, I mean. So I either... what the heck? Okay, extra defense is decent. Yeah, this is when Nephany starts getting pretty powerful. Once you've capped her skill and speed, you can raise her strength and defense up pretty high. With bonus, that's going to cost me a lot. No, I don't think I'll bonus experience any more in this one. And now skills. So, Rolf is... he doesn't really need that anymore, because he's definitely hitting S on his own, so might as well give him Blossom. I feel like even with Blossom, he's not going to get Strength, because that's just my luck. In terms of other skills, I have Shade. Assign that to... oh, actually, no, wait. Soren definitely needs Discipline if I'm going to be third tiering him now. For his staff rank, mostly. Nah, Shade's not good on you. And I kind of want things to attack Mia. Don't really want Shade on Gatry. I think I'm okay keeping Gatry with Celerity for now. In fact, I think the map that we're about to play slows down armors, so I probably still want Celerity. Though Celerity Pass on Heather is a pretty good combination too. I mean, I would go for that, but I usually put Heather in situations where she's unlikely to get attacked anyway. But, you know what? Might as well... I might as well give you Shade. It's not like anyone else is getting any use out of it. And so, also let me just quickly check the shop. Should I might as well buy some Olivia Grass. We have some people in this chapter we might need to use it on. And as for Florets, that's really only useful to buy if you're training Mist. And now, So, yeah, I am drastically early promoting Soren, but he's kept everything worthwhile for a mage, so there's really no reason for me not to at this point. So, our first third tier promotion. I kind of like his third tier outfit. So yes, the class of Arthos from FE7 returns as the third tier class of mages in this game. And it is actually a different class for every specific type of sage that it can promote from. So for example, Wind Archsage has different caps to Thunder Archsage, and I think it's actually meant to be pronounced Arcsage if the Japanese pronunciation is anything to go by. So yeah, Soren's caps are now much, much better. They're still not great by the standards of third tiers, but for this point in the game, they're going to be very, very good. Also, being our first third tier, and yes, this is why I gave him Discipline, because starting out in E rank in Starves, I want to rank that up as quickly as I can. Yeah, by the time I get, like, the SS Wind Tome, I'll obviously have an SS and Wind Magic. But I guess I need to either buy or... You know what, I think I'll buy an extra heal stuff. Menus D, so yeah, I have to use regular heal. Now, one good way to rank up your staff rank is to give yourself Discipline, and then have you just spam staff counterattacks on the enemy phase. Because staff counters don't cost any durability of the staff, and they do give weapon experience. And with Discipline, it's quite a significant amount of weapon experience, so putting Soren in a choke point with a staff equipped can be a pretty interesting way of getting his staff rank up. So, what I was actually going to show is being our first, well, and we've had Elincia before, but our first promoted third tier, Soren has now gained the skill Enemy Instantly Dies. Well, usually. This one doesn't actually multiply your damage, so very often the enemy won't instantly die to this, but it does nullify their resistance entirely, and given that enemies in Radiant Dawn usually have good resistance, this is a pretty big deal. Also, unlike Path of Radiance, Flare heals you now. So it's effectively Soul and Luna, but for magic, which is interesting. You know, actually, that makes it kind of a magical ether, just not in 2 attacks, which is pretty fitting considering Soren's connection to Ike. And I think that should be everything. Is there anything in the convoy that I can... I mean, there is that. I often end up using that on the silencer, because I tend to spam that a lot. It's just an amazing bow. A really, really amazing bow. Okay, bunch of wind edges, more javelins, hand axes. Well, I may as well sell the Ashera icon. And are you selling anything new? It looks like you've got mostly the same stock you did before. Yeah, that's fine. Okay then, let's move out. I will actually be needing to do a few bios in this episode. And I'm sure that many of you have been looking forward to one of them in particular. And they've showed themselves right now. Well, that's gonna be a lot of size the enemy are being hit from. That's like super flanking bonus. If this was Warhammer Fantasy, they'd be suffering a ridiculous modifier to their break tests. Although I don't even remember if the flanking bonus only applies once, or if it's been a long time since I even was vaguely familiar with the rules for that game. However, yeah. So Skrymir has just been starting to develop. Now is Skrymir's dumbest moment of the entire story. Skrymir has gone literally Leroy Jenkins, and he's ruining our entire strategy. But this isn't so much due to Skrymir's stupidity as it is due to... yeah. Zelgius knows his enemies, he knows them well. I actually really love this moment, because this is a major oh crap moment for you. It's like, yeah, Zelgius is really, really smart. He knows exactly what Screamier's weaknesses are, and he knows how to play to them. Remember that dialogue much earlier in part 3, where Screamier was like, no one would cower behind walls when they were challenged to a battle? Yeah, that was foreshadowing for this. That mentality is going to really come back to bite Screamier and the entire Laguz Alliance right now. That's an understatement, Ike. Oh, don't worry, I know just who to accompany us. We've got some pretty powerful soldiers by now. Hopefully Tiban gets in on this too. So, we have a fairly long mountain map to contend with. And we have some old friends returning, as well as some new ones who a lot of people don't like calling friends. I feel like the first people to appear here, like everyone who appears besides Titania and Soren, are whoever was first in your deployment list. No, he cannot. Please don't trust him with this at all. Before we move on to the chapter itself, though, we have on our team some new Laguz allies. We have Ranulf, who is extremely good. In a game where non-royal Laguz tend to be not worth using, Ranulf is one of the few exceptions. And that really says something because Ranulf is a cat, and cats suffer from that horrendous transform gauge. Cats can only fight to their full ability for maybe 1 or 2 turns, so in order for that to be worth it, you need to have really good stats, and thankfully Ranulf delivers. At base, he's as strong as Mordecai and faster than Leth. And his defense and HP are fairly solid too, so essentially Ranulf is a cat and a tiger all in one. He also has access to transfer bonuses, unlike his 2 subordinates. And his low-ish growths can be fixed with bonus experience, though it does cost a lot of bonus experience to level up Laguz, so I wouldn't recommend doing that until a lot later. His base stats are enough to carry him for quite a long time. And it's great that Ranulf is this good, because from this point on, he's going to act as a secondary protagonist for Ike's party, being a forced deployment to most chapters. If you're going to be using a non-royal Laguz extensively, Ranulf is one of your best options for that, and one of the few options for that. We also have Mordecai and Leth back. We also have Keisha, who is extremely bad. So, Keisha, for those wondering, his name is different in the American version because the American version got it wrong. This is the name that he went by in Path of Radiance when he was alluded to in Leth and Ranulf's supports. But anyway, Keisha has overall worse base stats than Mordecai despite joining at a higher level and having worse availability. We're certainly not off to a good start here. A tiger with only 20 strength and defense while transformed is really not that good, and even though his skill and speed are better than Mordecai's, that's not really doing him any favors. In fact, Maureen is just as fast as he is and had much better base strength and defense. Keisha does have decent growths by Laguz standards. Laguz tend to have lower growths because every stat gained in something that isn't HP or luck is worth double. Even with these growths though, you're usually better off using Mordecai, who, by the way, rejoined in the same chapter Keisha does. And speaking of people who join in the same chapter as Keisha who outclass him, Ranulf. I said before that Ranulf is basically a cat and a tiger combined. And he joins in the same chapter as Keisha, has the exact same availability as Keisha, gets transfer bonuses unlike Keisha, and is force for most of his chapters. Yeah, that leaves you very little reason to use Keisha. I guess I can explain the Quick Claw skill here because Keisha starts with it and it's the first we've ever seen of it. Quick Claw is a lot like Howl. It's a Beast Tribe exclusive skill that has a speed % chance of activating whenever an enemy hits you with an indirect attack. Instead of paralyzing the enemy takes damage equal to the user's strength stats. It can actually be somewhat decent on stronger cats like Ranulph, but Keisha's whole gimmick is being a tiger with low strength, so he's not the best candidate for this skill. One final thing about Keisha that I want to say here that doesn't relate to him in gameplay at all. It's just a detail that I find interesting. So, I've been referring to Keisha with male pronouns because in the English version he is canonically male. In the Japanese version it's a little more complicated though. There, Keisha speaks with female pronouns and uses feminine speech. There are two possible reasons for this, and I don't really think there's any right answer. The first is that Keisha is very heavily implied to be in love with Ranulph, and using feminine speech is roughly the Japanese equivalent of the camp gay stereotype. Shadow Kanji talks that way in Persona 4's Japanese version. However, there is some evidence in official guidebooks that Keisha in the Japanese version might have been transgender. A comment on Keisha's artwork by the developers says male body but female heart with a question mark. That would also explain the feminine pronouns and speech, and in fact, Keisha does sound like a feminine name to me. And Keisha's artwork does look kind of feminine as well, at least in my opinion. If this was true, it would make Keisha currently the only transgender character in the series. But it's not like this really means anything, because Keisha barely has any dialogue and overall is a pretty irrelevant character whose personality is never really explored. Still, it's kind of an interesting bit of trivia. Along with possibly the worst character in the history of Fire Emblem. I love Radiant Dawn, but I'll freely admit it's a very weird game in terms of character balance. It has Ha, generally agreed to be one of the most brokenly overpowered characters in the entire series, and then it has Lyre, generally agreed to be one of the worst characters in any Fire Emblem game. Why is that? Well, these are the stats of a generic cat NPC in 3 Prologue of the same level as Lyre. Now compare that to Lyre's actual base stats, and remember, the generic cat NPCs in 3 Prologue were terrible. Lyre does have insanely good skill and speed growth for a Laguz, given that every point gained in either of those stats effectively counts for double. And speed is one of the best stats in Fire Emblem. How could Lyre be terrible? Well, in order to make speed work, you kind of need to be able to do damage to enemies, and Lyre's base strength means that she can barely hurt anything in the chapter she joins in. To give you an idea, base Lyre's damage output is roughly equal to base Mist with florets, and Mist ends up a heck of a lot stronger when trained, is useful for reasons besides fighting thanks to being a staff user, and has way more availability. And isn't limited by a terrible transform gauge like cats are. There's actually a reason the majority of Laguz characters in this game follow a high bases, low growths build. It's because that actually works for them. Laguz gain experience extremely slowly and cost far more bonus experience to level up than Bjork do. Because of this, they're more about immediate power than long-term payoff. Because a long-term payoff build on them just isn't viable with their experience gain. And Lyre is a perfect example of that. You could theoretically increase her strength with bonus experience, but it just costs so much to do that. And if you are going to do that, why wouldn't you just use Ranulph? He's a cat who starts out with way higher strength, joins in the same chapter, gets transfer bonuses, and, in fact, actually averages better than she does. And even if for some reason you didn't want to use Ranulph or you really want 2 cats, guess who also rejoins in this chapter? Lyre's sister, who has much better base stats than she does and overall is a lot better. So there's really no reason to use Lyre unless everyone else is dead or you're on a self-imposed challenge. Which is something I might even consider doing one day, because actually taking Lyre to endgame would be pretty interesting. On that note, I'll see you next time.